Hi, this is Bill Monroe of Project Portfolio Excellence Incorporated, and this is part 2 of the Implementing Project Portfolio Excellence series of videos. The title of this video is Control the Bottleneck, Manage Throughput. In part 1 of this series, we talked about how we need to take a more holistic view of our software development and project management lifecycle processes. We also talked about the importance of establishing a more effective collaboration between business and IT, and how we can measure the quality and fitness for use of our project deliverables to give us feedback on how well we're achieving that collaborative effort. At this point, we're assuming that you've gone through the first 2 stages of Project Portfolio Excellence. Namely, that you've gone through the education, you've seen the videos, you've read the materials, and you've gone through stage 2 where you did some investigation and analysis as to why your projects have been failing in the past. Now we're moving on into stage 3, implementation, which includes building that collaborative relationship we talked about, and it includes the material in this video. Now, to reiterate something that we've said many times in the past, this does represent a change in philosophy, a change in the way that we think of software development and project management, but the way we've been doing it in the past for many companies just doesn't work. So in order to make it work, we need to undergo some kind of a process change. One of the main reasons that companies are getting disappointing and frustrating results with their software and projects today is represented in truth number 38. Most companies are trying to execute more projects than they have the capacity to successfully accomplish. And that's where we start in the discussion of this video, Control the Bottleneck and Manage Throughput. Bottleneck and throughput are a couple of terms that come from the theory of constraints. In a nutshell, the theory of constraints maintains that the throughput, or amount of work that can be achieved by a process, is governed by the step in that process that has the least amount of capacity. You'll remember that capacity is one of the 3 attributes of the project trinity, and as such, it is an absolute constraint on the amount of project work that can be achieved. This is supported by truth number 40, which states it doesn't matter how badly you want it or how desperately you need it if you don't have the skill, the will, and the capacity to achieve it. Sometimes companies will justify a project simply by saying, "We need it," or "We really want to do this," as if somehow the want or the need is going to magically remove any barriers to success. The beauty of Project Portfolio Excellence is that by understanding the attributes of the project trinity, understanding your levels of skill, will, and capacity, you can proactively choose projects that have a better chance of success, and you can proactively avoid projects that don't have much chance of success because of a lack of one of those 3 attributes. I'm not saying that you have to give up on the idea of pursuing a particular project. I'm just saying that if you know today that you don't have what it takes to be successful with a project, the first thing you need to do is address your weaknesses. Figure out what's standing in your way of success and address that in some way. Any one of the 3 attributes of the project trinity could be the bottleneck that's standing in your way of success. And there are many different ways to address that bottleneck. You can hire new people. You can educate the people you have. You can contract. You can outsource. The one thing you can't do and achieve success is just jump into the project and ignore the fact that those constraints exist. That's a recipe for failure. Truth number 133 brings us back to a concept that you've seen many times by now, and that is the capacity for quality work. Truth number 133 states it's impossible to optimally manage a project portfolio if you don't understand your capacity for quality work. Now, because this concept of capacity for quality work is so important, we're going to review exactly what that means. First of all, our capacity for quality work is the amount of work that can be executed while maintaining an acceptable level of quality. The level of quality that we're talking about could differ from company to company or even from project to project. It's something that might actually be set by the project sponsor depending on the urgency of the need. Truth number 130 states that if you exceed your capacity for quality work, the result will always be work of inferior quality. And that's where many companies are today. There's a lot of frustration and disappointment and even resentment in many companies today between business and IT areas. And a lot of this frustration and disappointment happens because project results fall short of expectations. Truth number 131 states that if the results you're getting are of inferior quality, you are by definition exceeding your capacity for quality work. It's up to you to figure out which of the attributes of the project trinity you're exceeding, or which one represents the bottleneck that's causing you to fall short of your expectations in your results. I'd like to offer an analogy now that hopefully will give some lessons on capacity, on quality, and is also going to touch on some of the reasons for project failure that will get back to what we talked about in our first video in the Implementing Project Portfolio Excellence series. In the first video, I presented the idea that the millions of flavors of project failure can be broken down to some combination of the three primary ingredients of failure, which are lack of one or more of the attributes of the project trinity. And in presenting that idea, I compared it to how the millions of colors of light can be broken down to some combination of the primary colors, blue, green, and red. Well, now we're going to compare developing software to baking bread. This is the software bakery. Let's say we own a bakery and we bake bread. That's our only product. We bake 1,000 loaves a day and we sell those loaves for $2 a piece. Our bread is really good. We're building up a following, and in a fairly short amount of time, our demand goes from 1,000 loaves a day to 2,000 loaves a day. Let's think about some of the ways that we might deal with this doubling of our demand. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is that with bread, you can't build up a backlog. When someone comes in to buy bread, if there's no bread available, they're going to go to another store, and you will have lost the opportunity. This is something that the store owner absolutely does not want to have happen. So we have to figure out some way to take advantage of this doubled demand. Well, the first solution that comes to mind is we can double our capacity. We can buy a second oven, we can hire more people, and that way we'll be able to bake 2,000 loaves a day. Of course, this is going to cost money, so the owner of the store needs to be confident that this new level of capacity will be consistent going into the future. Another possibility is to run double shifts. Of course, we have to hire people to do that as well, and if we're not confident that our demand is going to remain consistent, maybe we bring those extra people in on a contingent basis. This will result in training expenses, possibly quality issues, loyalty issues. Maybe these new folks won't have much loyalty or will to do the job well because the company's not showing much loyalty to them and just bringing them in on a contract basis. A third possibility, outsource the extra work to the bakery across town. They would probably love to have some extra work. The problem there is maybe we have to give up some proprietary information. We might have to give them our recipe in order for them to be able to do the work, and once they have our recipe, what would keep them from stealing our business? A fourth possibility, let's say that right now our mixing time is 10 minutes and our baking time is 20 minutes. Maybe we could cut mixing to 5 minutes and baking to 10 minutes and double our throughput that way. Now, this may sound like the silliest option because there would be obvious quality problems in our products, but when you get right down to it, this probably most represents the way that our projects are done today. Today, in companies where there are more projects than there are capacity, timelines often get compressed so that the quality that's needed in each of the steps of the life cycle ends up being shortchanged. And a fifth way that we could deal with our excess demand is we could raise our price. Maybe instead of $2 a loaf, we raise our price to $3 a loaf, and maybe that would cause our demand to fall back down to around the 1,000 loaves a day range. The downside to that approach is that we're setting out to purposely alienate half of our customers, convincing them that our product is too expensive for their table. So you can see that there are many ways of dealing with a capacity-related issue, and that each way has its own particular strengths and weaknesses. And I would maintain that the worst way of dealing with a capacity constraint is just trying to cram more work through the system at the expense of quality. This concludes part 2 of the Implementing Project Portfolio Excellence series. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me about it. I would also invite you to visit the website, look at the other series of videos, the How Quality Software Happens if you haven't already, and help me spread the word about Project Portfolio Excellence.